I live in a plot of earth, a street, the grocer and the butcher, or the people that I meet, the children in the playground, the faces that I see, all races and religions, that's America to me.
Side working, the worker at my side, a little town or city where my people lived and died. The howdy and the handshake, the air and feeling free, and the right to speak my mind out, that's America to me.
Whenever freedom's threatened, it means much more to me.
The right to raise our children and live as we believe.
We know we must defend her before she disappears. That's a dream that has survived for over 200 years. The house we live in, there are good things everywhere. A land of wealth and beauty, with enough for all to share. A nation blessed by heaven, a home of liberty,
And a freedom-loving people.
that's America to me.
The spirit of freedom and liberty lies in the hearts of all nations, a spirit that declares that all people should be free of tyranny and oppression, a spirit required by all men to know and understand their natural, God-given rights. From the beginning of time and throughout history, men and women have cried and fought to champion the cause of freedom, the individual worth of man, and the protection of their rights. The incredible, miraculous beginning of America is a story of conflict, struggle, passion, and the desire of a people wanting to be free.
America, we are thy sons, and we shall keep thee free. For in our veins there flows the blood of Washington and Lee. No foreign flag upon thy sod shall we allow to stand. No iron shackles from abroad shall touch thy foot or hand. They mock thy army, say 'tis small, thy navy too they scorn. Have they forgot the laurels won since freedom here was born? They say thine untrained citizens will never soldiers be. Have they forgot those valiant men who fought in '63? America, thy sons are true, and if thou wilt but call, 10 million men will give to thee their homes, their lives, their all. For thou dost stand for what is right, for freedom of the seas. God grant old glory may always float forever in the breeze. Freedom isn't free. You gotta pay the price. You gotta sacrifice for your liberty. Freedom is a word often heard today, but if you wanna keep it, there's a price to pay. Each generation's gotta win it anew, 'cause it's not something handed down to you. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free. You gotta pay the price. You gotta sacrifice your own thing is another man's best. For every man's freedom's the eternal quest. Free to give humanity your very best. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free. You gotta pay the price. You gotta sacrifice for your liberty. Freedom isn't free. Freedom isn't free. Break it down. Hey.
Freedom is a God-given gift, promising life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for every person. But freedom is not easy to come by, and it is never free. It usually comes with a price, and that price can even be that of one's own life. In the early 1400s, Saint Joan of Arc, heroine of France, cried out as she tried to champion the cause of freedom, and boldly, at age 17, led the French army. When Joan was just 13 years old, she heard a voice calling her to deliver France from England, and boldly and heroically convinced the King of France to make her the military leader of their armies. Let's journey back into history and meet this young heroine.
Joan, you shall put on masculine clothes, for you are she who has been chosen by the King of Heaven to restore the kingdom of France and to aid and protect King Charles, who has been driven from his domain. You will accomplish miraculous things.
I stood in awe. I knew that what I'd heard was real, but I didn't even know how to ride a horse, let alone lead an army into battle. With great determination, I departed from my home forever. After much scrutiny and rigorous examination by the king, I was finally granted my desire to lead the French army into battle.
Know all men that the illustrious Charles, King of France, by the grace of God, is pleased to confer upon his well-beloved servant, Joan of Arc, the title, emoluments, and authorities of General-in-Chief of the armies of France.
Now that I had the blessings of God and knighthood, I felt confident, energetic, and I seemed to have a great endurance for fatigue. Sometimes, when all seemed lost and my men were exhausted and discouraged, I went off to pray. I'm just a girl, barely old enough to leave my family, but I know you've chosen me. I must be brave, but I must confess that I am so afraid, as my men are losing faith. Lord, give me strength. Lord, give me courage as this young girl in armor fights against the foe. Lord, please have mercy. Lord, give me power. Renew my conviction. Help my confidence grow.
Men, I am tired and discouraged, wondering what we're fighting for.
Lord, please have mercy. Lord, give us power. Renew our conviction. Help our confidence grow. Then take courage. God is with us as we fight this bloody war.
Fight this bloody war.
my men with confidence, and they were renewed to achieve the impossible. The victory was close at hand, and my men followed me with my indomitable courage as we charged over the walls of our enemies. The English, thinking they were safe, found themselves under attack in front and in back.
But despite the attack, on May 26, 1430, Joan was captured. She was in prison and kept in heavy chains for months. She was accused of witchcraft and of following the devil after miraculously surviving an arrow wound. Her freedom would be granted only upon her denial of the voices. Nothing would change her mind, and she stood by her testimony. The fires were ignited around the stake, and they gave her one more time to recant.
Every man gives his life for what he believes. Every woman gives her life for what she believes. Some people believe in little or nothing, and yet they give their lives to that little or nothing. One life is all we have. We live it as we believe in living it. And then it's gone. But to surrender what you are and live without belief is more terrible than dying.
We men, it is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes.
Will you join in the crusade? Will be strong and stand with me? Beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Then join in the fight that will give you the right to be free. Do you hear the people sing, singing the songs of angry men? It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes.
Will you give all you can give so that our banner may advance? Some will fall and some will live. Will you stand up and take your chance?
The blood of the martyrs will water the meadows of France.
Do you hear the people sing, singing the songs of angry men? It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes.
We hear the cries of angry men from around the world. This time, the cries are coming from the Dutch in the 1500s, when they were under attack by the Spaniards. These poor Dutch people suffered many atrocities by the Spaniards. They had been taxed unjustly, their property had been seized, and many had been thrown in prison. Not only that, thousands had been burned at the stake for simply reading the Bible. Peter van der Werf was the burgomaster, and he did everything in his power to rescue the Dutch people and their land from the cruel bonds of oppression. But the people were starving, and thousands had already died. The few remaining were surviving on cats, rats, and dogs. Babies were dying in their mother's arms, disease was rampant, and dead bodies were everywhere. Despite their longings for freedom, some of the men began to beg the burgomaster to give up.
We haven't had support in 5 months.
have taken an oath to hold this city. May God grant me the strength to keep it. Here, take my sword. Plunge it into my body and divide my flesh to appease your hunger if you will. But God help me, I will never surrender. You call us rat eaters! We are! But so long as you hear dogs bark within these walls, you may know that this city holds out. We will eat our left arms and fight with our right. And when we have strength no longer, we shall set fire to the city and perish in the flames rather than give up our liberties. David walked in with a stone clutched in it. He was only a boy, but he knew someone must take a stand. There will always be a valley, always one must scale. Oh,
Into valleys, into waters, into jungles, into hell. Let us ride home again with a story to tell. Into darkness, into danger, into storms that rip the night. Don't give up, don't give in, but give thanks for the glorious fight.
you can tremble, you can fear it,
But keep your spirit alive, boy. Let the shiver of it sting you.
bring into battle.
To your knees, boys.
Never hold back your step for a moment.
Never doubt that your courage will grow.
Hold your head even higher
As into the fire we go.
Men, if we do not stand for something, we will fall for anything! Are there mountains that surround us? Are there walls that block the way? Knock them down! Backwards and forwards and into the fray. Into terror, into valor, charge ahead, no return. This is into the fire we fly, and the devil will burn. Someone has to rally, rush in, we get to rally and win, boys. When the world say nothing, that's wasting you to not you march on, boys. Never hold back your step for a moment. Never doubt that your courage will grow. Hold your head even higher as into the fire we go.
Lightning strike, let the flash of it shock you.
Choke your fears away, pull as tight as a wire. Let the fever strike, let the force of it rock. We will have our day, sail into the fire. We die, free men, and deliver the world from tyranny. Someone has in this valley, rush into this valley and win. When the world say not to, that's when you've got to march on, boys. Yes, it's higher and higher as into the fire we go, into fire, onward
At the turn of the 16th century, we hear another cry for freedom. We take you to a region called Scrooby, England. In those days, rich or poor, everyone had to belong to the Church of England. Rejecting the doctrines of the Church of England was a crime punishable by prison or even death. The separatists sold their homes and most of their possessions only to be caught, robbed of the few things they had left, and thrown into dungeons or forced to live in the streets. These compassionate, freedom-loving people did all they could to keep their dreams of the promised land alive. They just wanted a different kind of life, a place where their children would be cherished, a place they could call their own.
Long ago and far away, before the world had come to this, I took for granted how my life would be, assuming that my freedom would be free. Before these ancient shadows fell, I reveled in the light of day. I rarely ever cried, my patience wasn't tried, and heroes never died. But if I had my way, things would be different. Danger wouldn't come from the sky up blue. Choices would be clear, strangers would be kinder, love a little blinder. This is what I pray, if I had my way. It's merry old England for the rich, but we, the poor and screwy, have only but a scrap to eat. We work and we slave for the social elite. We have rats on our backs, forced to beg in the streets. It's hard for us to understand. Please God, take us by the hand, lead us to a place of our own. Our hunger and everything, Bibles are burned. Out to eat. Why should we endure such moral decay? Our children are haunted and stray. It's hard for us to understand. Please God, take us by the hand, lead us to a place where we can be free. A place of our own. Things would be different. Danger wouldn't come from a sky of blue. Angels would appear, children would be cherished, hope would never perish, faith would not betray. If I had my way. Come on, everyone, we can do this. A place of our own, far from tyranny's hand. Just by God's holy grace, is there such a land? We've got to get out. Please, God, help us free, and let a new world where we can give thanks. No secret for the rich, it's for the poor and sweet. Time to take a stand. Please, God, take us by the hand. If I had my witness to lead us to a place of our
Finally, in the late summer of 1608, the Scrooby separatists reached Holland. Though the air was charged with energy and excitement, it was not the kind of life they were looking for. The separatists refused to let their children be taught the ways of the liberal Dutch. The expectations for a newfound freedom ignited the fire in their hearts, so they left their homes to board a crowded ship, crossed a vast ocean, and sailed to the promised land of America.
We've been traveling far without a home, but not without a star.
We only want to be free. We want our cross. Hang on to the
We're coming to America, never looking back again. We're coming to America.
Though it seems so far away, we're traveling light today. In the eye of a storm, in the eye of a storm.
Everywhere around the world, we're coming to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, we're coming to America. Got a dream to take us there. We're coming to America. Got a dream we want to share. We're coming to America.
We're coming to America. We're coming to America. We're coming to America. We're coming to America today. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing, of thee I sing today. To America. In America, I'm home in America. Here we come, America.
We're coming to America. There's freedom in America. Our new home in America. We're coming to America today. Today. America today.
The first half of the voyage was rather smooth, but then they were faced with bad storms, sickness, and even death set in, and it became doubtful that they would even make it to America. And when they finally landed, they had nothing but their faith to sustain them.
Our fathers got to the author of liberty. To thee we sing. Long may our lands be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might. Praise God our King.
The colonists were beginning to feel comfortable in the New World, but they were still under the rule of the King of England, and he was making their lives miserable. They were ordered to fight England's wars and pay for them with heavy taxes under unjust laws. These demands became so unbearable and intolerable that the colonists began to rebel against the king. Now let's take a look at the colonists as they mock the King of England.
Here you go, Your Majesty. Your crown, Your Majesty.
Boo! 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 King of luck, king of slime, king of filth, king of putrescence. Boo! Boo!
on their minds tonight. What is it you want now? Always complaining about something, aren't you? Can't you understand that I make all the decisions for you? For I am the king. And you will say yes, your majesty, to everything I tell you.
It's no, your majesty. It's war, your majesty. A revolution, your majesty. Yes, your majesty. The answer is war.
And war, it shall be.
The air was supercharged with the buzz and the fever of revolution. People could smell it in the air. They could feel it in their bones. It was Patrick Henry who ignited that spark as he spoke these famous words to the Virginia representatives.
Gentlemen, they cry, peace, peace. But there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here, idle? What is it the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
The colonists were ready for war. A few brave men warned the Minutemen of Lexington and Concord that the British were coming.
Well, that's no way to face an oncoming army. Come forward and let me tell you the story of Paul Revere. We'd like to have all children up here to come and sing and dance and play with us tonight. Come on, come up. We'd love to have everyone of any age. You guys can all come up. We'd love to have you. There are 2 places you can, well, 3 places actually. You guys can come sit with the beautiful ladies on this side, the wonderful women on this side, or you guys can join me up here on the small stage in the front. Come on. We'd love to have every one of you up here. Don't you guys all look so patriotic? What? It must be a birthday today of some great country called America. All right, is everyone up here that wants to be? We'd love to have each and every one of you up here. I promise we do. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Well, hardly a man is now alive that remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friends, if the British march from the town tonight by land or by sea, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower. 1, if by land, and 2, if by sea, and I on the opposite shore shall be ready to ride and to sound alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and at arms. Well, the fate of the nation was riding that night, and the sparks struck out with the steed in its flight, and the rest of the story you know from the books you've read, how the British regulars fired and fled. Now the people shall awaken to hear this poem evermore echoed from each housetop and through each open door, and the people shall awaken and rise to hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Listen, can you guys hear the hoofbeats on the land? Can you hear the whinnying of the horse? Are you ready to ride like Paul Revere?
We saw 2 lanterns in the North Church Tower. Ride, ride, they knew this was to be the fateful hour. Ride, ride, the man to ride into a home. Every village and every farm to awaken them and call to arm. It was the ride of Paul Revere.
By July 1776, the colonists were still under the rule of the king. There wasn't a lot at stake. Declaring independence was a very serious matter, because under English law, if they opposed the king, they would be treated as traitors. If they joined the rebels, they risked not only their own lives, but also the lives of their families. The colonists sent representatives to the Continental Congress to discuss independence from Great Britain. The colonies needed to be unanimous in their decision to adopt the resolution to declare independence. Now, please understand, these were very wise men. They all had great character, and they knew all that they stood to lose. And knowing all this, you'd think after 310 years I should be okay doing this. And knowing all this, they mutually pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They declared independence.
Sink or swim. Live or die. Survive or perish. I give my hand and heart to this vote. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. Why then should we defer this declaration? We may not live to the time when this declaration shall be made good, but it will stand. It may cost treasure, and it may cost blood, but it will stand. And it will richly compensate for them both.
These words will go forth when our bones are dust. To the slave in bondage they will speak hope. To the mechanic in his workshop, freedom. That parchment will speak to kings in a language sad and terrible as the trumpet of the archangel. You have trampled on the rights of mankind long enough. At last, the voice of human woe has pierced the ear of God and called his judgment down.
Sign if the next moment the gibbet's rope is around your neck. Sign if the next moment this hall rings with the echo of the falling axe.
Sign by all your hopes in life or death. As men, husbands, fathers, men with your names to the parchment, or be accursed forever.
Sign, not only for yourselves, but for all ages. For that parchment will become the textbook of freedom, the Bible of the rights of man forever.
Father! Oh, dear Father, the old world is baptized in blood. It is drenched with the blood of millions who have been executed in slow and grinding oppression. Yes, were my soul trembling on the wings of eternity, were this hand freezing to death, were my voice choking with the last struggle, I would still, with the last gasp of my voice, beg you to sign this declaration and implore you to remember this truth. God has decreed that America is to be free from oppression.
Come, gentlemen. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government. Gentlemen, today we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. This is the moment we have waited for. This is the moment. This is the day when I send all my doubts and demons on their way. Every endeavor I have made ever is coming into play, is here and now today.
This is the time when the momentum and the moment are in rhyme.
Give me this moment, these precious times. I'll gather up my past and make some sense at last. This is the moment when all we've done, all of this dreaming, scheming and screaming, become one.
This is the day, see it sparkle and shine, when all I've lived for become mine. For all these years I faced the world alone, and now the time has come to prove to them we've made it on our own. This is the moment, our final test. Destiny beckoned, I never reckoned second best. I won't look down,
I must not fall. This is the moment,
the sweetest moment of them all. This is the moment we face the odds. This day or never, we'll stand forever with our all. When we look back, we will always recall, moment for moment. This was the moment, the sweetest moment of them
America was now a new nation. But as we know, freedom is never free. On the very day the Declaration was signed, England's own General Howe sailed into New York Harbor with the largest armada ever assembled. This was going to be a fight to the bitter end. We needed George Washington to lead us to victory, but after losing 5 important battles in New York and being chased all over New Jersey, Washington's men were a pathetic sight when he positioned them on the west side of the Delaware. The brutal Hessian mercenaries kept an eye on them from Trenton. The turning point of the war was found in the heart of Washington himself when he read Tom Paine's crisis letter, number 1.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, at this moment of crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered.
Today, we need more honest, truthful heroes. People of good standards. People that can lead us through our trials. People like George Washington.
Come on, everybody. We're talking about the founder of our country, our first general, our first president, and the man to whom we owe so much. He had hope in America when all was lost. So put your hands together and clap along. You know what I'm talking about.
George Washington, America's #1 son. He is the one to get things done. George Washington. The redcoats were on the run. We're #1 thanks to George Washington.
Hey, let's talk about George Washington. His love of country and sense of duty were matched by no man. He was a great man of war, and every soldier looked up to him with great trust. He had absolute courage and determination in every good cause. He was the most respected man in America, and should be today.
By December 1776, the Continental Army, every major battle, was on the verge of defeat. The Hessians were coming on strong. Washington's men were storming, freezing, had rats on their feet, and not many weapons. George made his next move, and he did what every great leader would do. He attacked the enemy! Those Hessians!
He is the one to keep us free from tyranny, just wait and see. Shh. Come on. Let's go. Everybody row. 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 Row, come on, let's go! Through the ice and snow, it was getting harder to row. Don't you know, it's a real tough go. Oh no, oh no.
Slow down. I know stuff, but God. Oh dear God, what shall we do? We must save our country, and we need help from you. Please help us through this terrible night. Could we ask for anything more?
We're hungry, we're cold, this is war! Soon goes Hessians by storm, but surprise attacking them more. Now they're on the run, thanks to George Washington.
Well done, well done. Let us put it standing. Well done, young man, well done. Let us roll. Roll back, well done. All right, men, here they come. Ready the barricade. Fire one, fire two, fire three.
George Washington, America's #1 son. He is the one to keep us free from tyranny.
Even though the war was won, England was still breathing down the necks of America and would not let go. America was once again at war, the War of 1812. To break the will of the American people, England bombarded Fort McHenry. However, Americans still stood strong and were willing to once again die for their freedom. Both sides had captured prisoners. Francis Scott Key was appointed to negotiate the release of the prisoners.
Men, I have good news for you tonight. You are free.
Not so fast, Mr. Key. You know too much, and plans have changed. We will be attacking Fort McHenry tonight. Fort McHenry must either lay down the colors of her flag, or we will destroy the fort. You can't show that force. You have no justification for this war.
We do not need
Justification for this war. And we have told your people that if they would lower that flag and surrender the fort, the shelling will stop immediately. Fort McHenry will then be under British rule. Time for tea.
Fort McHenry was within striking distance of the British ships.
How many British ships are there?
I count 16.
Mr. Key, tell us, where's the flag?
Does it still fly over the ramparts?
Every time the bombs would explode near the flag, Francis Scott Key could see the flag illuminated in the red glare of that bomb. During the bombardment, the flag had suffered many direct hits, but it never fell. While on the ship that morning, Francis Scott Key penned these words.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
The victory of that day renewed the Americans' faith that God would be their protector through any peril. And our flag still flies triumphantly today.
Sound of a distant drumming, I hear the trumpets call. I hear the tramp of a bandsman marching, stirring my heart and soul. I hear the stars and stripes forever, I hear the cymbals crash. Leading the way in the grand parade, I thrill to my country's flag. I love Old Glory, in her I see the hopes of all men who would be free. I love Old Glory, long may she reign over America, the homeland of the brave. I hear the voice of a schoolboy speaking, hand held upon his heart, pledging his love for God and country, yearning to do his part.
The cries of freedom continued throughout the land for nearly 100 years after America had declared that all men are created equal. The black people in America struggled under the bonds of slavery. Their cries were expressed through their songs and prayers. And after a brutal civil war and several amendments to the Constitution, they could be set free from oppression. The rights of all men were acknowledged in Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address when he said, "With malice towards none, with charity toward all, let us strive on for lasting peace." And America's message of freedom spread fast throughout the world. The downtrodden people from every country came by thousands seeking a better life. It was the hope of all men to live together as a family, to build a legacy of opportunity, to own a piece of land, a home, and maybe even a thriving business. They just wanted a better life. And when they saw the Statue of Liberty, they knew they had come to the right place. There she stood, with her crown of 7 spikes shining forth and inviting the 7 continents of the 7 seas of the world to come to the land of the free. Clutched in her arm were the tables of law, inscripted with the date 1776, signifying the Declaration of Independence, which formed the first of a truly free people. At her feet was the broken chain of tyranny that had dominated the history of the world until the birth of America. And in her uplifted arm rose the glowing torch, offering the light of hope to those living in a darkened world of oppression. Tears streamed down the immigrants' faces, and they fell on bended knees, for they knew they had found their home at last.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer.
America truly is our home sweet home. But the fabric of family life becomes frayed and torn during war times. For this reason, we long for the day when our troops come home from war. We cherish those beloved sons and daughters of America who continue to fight for the cause of freedom. In the words of an American soldier, I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. Let us all become guardians of this freedom, to uphold that which is most dear to us, God, family, country. The fight for freedom is not easy, and it will cost blood, and it will cost treasure. But we will conquer all foes and give all glory to our God. We will never accept defeat, and we will never quit. Ladies and gentlemen, These young people have sacrificed a lot these last few months preparing this program so that you and I may be reminded and feel the spirit of liberty. But now I ask you, now that you've felt it, what are we prepared to do about it? Because this is only the beginning of America's story. In America, we all share in protecting and upholding the rights of freedom. And it is our responsibility to finish writing this story. This sacred document, the Declaration of Independence, signed 240 years ago today, is the foundation of a good government. This document, the Constitution of the United States, is still the supreme law of our land. May we uphold both documents forever, even to the laying down of our lives. Freedom and independence will go forth to America's hearts like the voice of God. And our work will not be done until all men are equally privileged with the blessings of liberty. United, we stand. Divided, we will fall. And may we pray that God will continue to bless the United States of America.
Tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you.
And tell them in our struggles we were not the only one.
Make them hear you. Make them hear you.
And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight,
That sometimes there were battles
which are more than black or white.
And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right.
Make them hear you. Go out and tell us. The hard part. Make them hear you. Wherever freedom threatens you, the clouds will turn the tide. Make them hear you. Make them hear you.
Your sword can lead us, David, or the power.